conference, How Does 3D Change Creative Workflows in the Industry? My name is Bastien from Mineralogy Cluster, and I will be your host, timekeeper, and also reading the questions. So you don't have access to the mic, so we kindly ask you to write down your question on the chat, and at the end, we will read them and answer them on the possible. This is a 30-minute presentation, so the first 20 minutes will be dedicated to the presentation itself, and then we will dedicate 10 minutes for the question and answers. That's all with me, so please, Pierre, the mic is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bastien. So hi everyone, thank you Mineralogic for having us today. So today I will try to explain you a little bit about Adobe and the 3D and AR division that is part of Adobe now through the acquisition of Algorithmic now for more than a year. So I used to work for Algorithmic, and now being part of Adobe, I'm heading a team called the Special Projects team that is focusing on innovative workflow and exploration of new pipelines. So today I will tell you a little bit more about Adobe 3D and Immersive and Substance, and the best way to showcase it is to tell a little bit about the story itself of Substance. So I have a small show reel of a couple of realizations that has been done by customers and users, starting from the game industry, as we are coming from the game industry. So nowadays, around 95% of the AAA studio are using Substance to texture, so to apply materials to their games. So here are a couple of examples that you can see here. So long story short, when you are playing video games today, you are seeing assets and 3D objects that has been textured with Substance in order to bring realism to those video games. And based on this technology, especially real-time technology, we've been extending it, and especially the usage of it, to architecture, design, VFX, and animation. So based on the same technology, same way, especially to describe materials virtually, you can also texture those kind of scenes that are more architecture visualization oriented. So here are a couple of renderings coming from the community. So you can see that it can go from very stylized to very realistic 3D props. It can be also come from animation to game and to design. So really the starting point of Algorithmic that has been founded now 15 years ago in Clermont-Ferrand by Sébastien Deguy after his PhD at University of Clermont-Ferrand, now extend to the full market. So what is 3D texturing? What you see on the left is the mesh, the 3D model. On the right, it's exactly the same 3D model, but after being textured using Substance Paint, and after the material being created in Substance Designer or Alchemist. So here you can really see the difference and how key is the texturing part in the process of having realistic assets in 3D. So as mentioned, we are a world leader in video games, some extract of few customers. Naughty Dogs have been great customers and partners. CD Projekt, Ubisoft, Square Enix, you might know all of them if you're a gamer. Film and animation, it's more obvious and it's closer to the video game. It's staying on the screen, but it's both VFX or special effects in realistic movies, but also animation, like what Illumination or Blue Sky are doing. And so that's fairly from 10 years to 7 years ago. And architecture and design was the one that came a little bit later on, even though it's really bringing the same kind of technology to another types of users. So today I will focus to explain you how we did start from the video games and how we apply this technology to things that are more industrial design and architecture. Some metrics that can be key for you to know. The community of active users is more than 250 today. And we also have more than 650 schools teaching the Substance software in their curriculum. So to focus on some of an extract of customers that are using Substance in industrial design, here are some examples. So you can see on the first line that is mostly car manufacturers, also people in visualization and tier one suppliers with the second line, and going down you can see people that are more in the industrial equipment, aerospace, technology, advertisement, simulation, also consulting, GAFAM, toys, more furniture design, but also fashion, luxury, and footwear and apparel. So you can see that also the footprint within the industrial design is fairly large. And something I wanted to highlight, because it might be a detail for you, but in the whole presentation, everything that you will see are 3D renderings. So from the very beginning, what you've seen in videos, and also in the coming up examples I will take, there is no pictures that are taken with a traditional camera in the real world. So here is a virtual camera that you could use to take picture in the real world, but rendered virtually. So it's a 3D model that has been textured using Substance. Other example in watches, music instruments, but also transportation. So it can come from the motorbike to cars to also trains. This example is interesting also, is that coming from the gaming world, we have the capability to add some details that you can only see in the real world, like the dust, the dirt, and mosquitoes and things like that. And being able to do that, you are breaking the too perfect CGI or 3D effects that you usually have. And for instance, as soon as you add a fingerprint on a keyboard, people don't believe anymore that it's a 3D rendering. So it's fairly key in our value proposition. Another key aspect, and it's really central into our offer, is having the capability to describe materials and as realistically as possible, so that when you are using all those materials together, then your 3D scene look also super realistic. So each of those materials has been described using our software and then applied in a wider scene. Same thing in the fashion industry. So here, for instance, what you can see is a digital fabric. And we also keep the flexibility of the 3D world. So here, for instance, if you want to replace a bird by a flower, you can directly get the result. Imagine in the real world, if you have to rebuild a prototype of this fabric, it will take hours or even days. So applying those kind of fabrics to interior design, you can create furniture design rendering, e-commerce rendering, footwear renderings, like so. Last point I wanted to highlight also is, as soon as you have made the investment to have the 3D model and the 3D twin of your product, then you can generate many variation, many rendering. It can be around colors, it can be around options, it can be around 3D details. It's really something that you can get a lot out of as soon as you have built this 3D scene. Same thing for static image, animation, movies out of a 3D scene. So I wanted to spotlight two things that are very unique to the Substance value proposition. The first one is around the photorealism and the parametric capabilities. And the second one is about the ecosystem and how Substance can work in many software and look similar. So around the realism, that's another example from the community. But really the idea with Substance is you have the full control to any detail and to any detail of the materials and the texturing of the assets. So you can reach a very high level of realism. And most of the time people are not able to tell anymore if it's a 3D or a physical object. The second point is about the flexibility of it. So the whole point of using Substance is having the capability afterwards to change things. So here, for instance, on this specific fabric, You are able to change separately the different color. You can also change the metallic effect, and you can see as soon as you are moving the light, it will react differently. So it's very, very key for us is that it's not pixel based. It's really based on the description of your digital material. And of course, as soon as you have this approach, you can do variation very, very easily and quickly. So really unleashing the capabilities of your designer to generate variation and proposals. Because in the end, we expect to have more creativity by having 3D being used. About the ecosystem and working everywhere, you might not know all of those players, but I just wanted to highlight that we are not alone, and the whole things from the day one with Substance is to be able to plug to any kind of software and workflow. So if you are using a game engine, and we see game engine being used more and more in the industry, such as Unreal and Unity, then you will be able to use Substance material within those tools. Same thing for modeling and animation, whatever it's coming from Autodesk with 3ds Max and Maya, or coming from the Soul system with Kitia, or the Foundry with Modo. All that you can use Substance material. Same thing for the renderers from Keyshot to VRED to Dimension. And the very strong thing is that on top of being able to use them in all those kind of tools, it will look consistent. It will always look the same, whatever is the tool being used. And that's very, very important. So when you have an asset that is being, for instance, textured in Substance Painter, then you know that you will be able to reuse these assets in many ways with many pipelines and workflows. To finish, I wanted to, of course, showcase the software in action and also describe you a little bit what is doing what. So Substance Designer is our first independent software that is focusing on material creation based on nodal approach. So it's a node-based graph that describes how material react to light. It's a fairly technical tool. Even today in the game industry, it's used by the tech artists, what is called tech artists. And in order to widen the range of people using Substance to create materials, we have created Substance Alchemist that is more accessible from a UI and UX point of view, and also is more focusing on color, material, and finish designer, coming from the industrial design industry or the architecture industry. So those two are really focusing on creation of materials, whatever it's procedural, so mathematically defined, or scan-based, so you take a picture of an existing samples and then you get a digital twin out of it. Then Substance Painter is our biggest tool as it's used by more than 200,000 of users. And it's really when you are mixing, putting your materials onto your 3D assets. And finally, Substance Source is our library of materials, digital materials that are ready to use. But the best thing to see how it goes and how it looks is to see them all in action. And I will also add at the very end both Adobe tools, one that is focusing on rendering, that is Adobe Dimension, and Aero that is focusing on augmented reality. So let's take the example of texturing this shoe, and let's start with Alchemist. And here you can see on the bottom a picture that we took with a cell phone of the physical samples of the materials, and we want to have a digital twin out of it. So you just drag and drop your image and start to have a first digital materials. It's not corresponding to the final one. You need to add some features, but you can see that it's super simple. You have a couple of features that you add on top of the other as you are doing it in Illustrator or Photoshop. So you are equalizing it, so making it flat. You are cropping the area you want to keep in your final materials. And then you start the tiling. So that's very key in the texturing workflow, is based on a sample that is a defined size, can be 10 centimeters by 10 centimeters. You are making a sample that then repeats itself to a bigger object. So you can scan a sample that is 10 by 10 and then apply it to, for instance, a shoe that is 20 centimeters or even a sofa that is 2 meters. So the tiling part is very key. And it used to be done by by having a cumbersome workflow. Here we streamline everything. And on top of it, what we are providing is a way to generate variation and to generate creativity. Because as soon as you have a digital twin, then you are able to generate variation on top of it. And so you don't need to have 10, 100 of samples. You can have one digital sample and then create the variation digitally and virtually. So we have created a material in order to texture our shoe. Now we will load the 3D model of the shoe within Substance Painter. So switching to another software here in Substance Painter, loading the 3D file, and starting to texture it. Before any texturing exercise, what we do is what we call the baking. So there is no link with the baguette. It's just getting as much information as possible out of the 3D model. So knowing about the curvature, knowing about what we call the wall space, meaning that if you apply dust, then the dust will be on top of your object. If you apply mud, it will come in from the bottom of your object, just to name a few examples. So here you recognize the material that we've been scanning using Substance Alchemist. We just drag and drop it on the surface of the shoe and having it ready to go. For the rest of the materials, what we will be doing is to browse our library of materials, Substance Source, and get some materials we want out of it. So in order to navigate in Substance Source, you can use keywords or you can use families of materials, as you can see on the left. And directly from the interface of Substance Source, you can download the materials in order to use it in our software. So it can be Painter, Designer, or Alchemist, but also in all our integration that we were mentioning before. So Unreal Engine, Unity, 3ds Max, or PTA. Now we have those materials. We just keep on drag and dropping the materials to the different parts of the shoe, and each time modifying the materials. As we explained, the materials are parametric. So here in the thumbnails of your material library, you will see a black rubber, but at any time you can turn it into gray, blue, white, yellow. Adapting also the scale to the object, the scale of the materials, and we start to have a more realistic shoe design. What is also key in the Substance Painter workflow is that most of the time you have a fairly simple 3D model. It can come from photogrammetry, it can come from CAD, it can come from 3ds Max or Maya and polygons modeling. And adding those kind of details like the gum in front of it or logos and things like that can be very time consuming in the modeling part, while in the texturing it's just a matter of a few seconds. So that's what we are doing for the logo here. The Substance logo we are putting on the side of the shoe. Instead of modeling it, we are putting it in the texturing part of the workflow. So resizing and seeing directly how it will look like in 3D. I've been exchanging with some people in the footwear industry that are telling me that they are still doing it with a physical shoe and printing with a traditional printer of the logo to see how it looks like. Here you can do it directly on your mesh, on your 3D model, and directly see how it will look like. Important point also is that we are not stirring the pixels, but the interaction you have with the mesh. So for instance, if you want to replace this logo in all the position one time, you just replace the image by another one, and we will update all of those in your 3D model. Stitches, so I was mentioning about the train, the dust and dirt, but you can also add some specific details such as stitches. So it's as simple as that. Keep in mind that at any time afterwards you will be able to change the color of those stitches. It's as simple as that. We can also use the symmetry mode. So when you paint on one side, it's painting on the other side of your object in the same time. Now we are done with Substance Painter. We can export to any kind of tools, Unity, Unreal, Keyshot. Here we will export it to Adobe Dimension so that we will be able to showcase you a little bit of the features of Adobe Dimension. So exporting the different maps. Here we are creating both the 3D and the match with the maps that you can see, and drag and drop it in Dimension. So you can see from a UI point of view, with Dimension, we want to reach a wide audience of users, especially people that are not knowledgeable around 3D yet. So we want to make it as simple as possible to drag and drop, position it, resize, and rotate your object. Also, from a pure UI point of view, we are keeping a lot of interaction that you will get in Photoshop or Illustrator. At any time, you can render, generate a more realistic version of your asset, changing the color of the background, changing the lighting. So here, for instance, we are using a HDRI, so a lighting environment that is capturing both the reflections, but also the light sources. And we can rotate this 360 image around the object in order to get the right shadow. Same thing for the floor. We want it to be glossy or matte. It's as simple as that. Something I also wanted to highlight is how you can use together Dimension with Illustrator. So here we have an Illustrator file with different artboard, and directly from Dimension, we're able to switch from an artboard to another. And we can even have side-by-side Dimension and Illustrator running, and keep on doing some modification in Illustrator, being able to get them in Dimension. So it's what we have also between Substance Painter and Unity or Unreal. Is what we call a live link. Finally, if you have a machine that is not that powerful, you can also render the images on the cloud. So you can have a fairly light laptop or desktop and ask to have the images being rendered on the cloud, meaning that your machine will keep on having really high performances, and you will get a super powerful rendering cluster on the other end, and get the image at the result. So it's a feature that is definitely very helpful. Last feature we wanted to showcase is also the capability to generate a 3D scene, because indeed you can generate 2D renderings out of your 3D assets, but best is to have a 3D viewer to enjoy the 3D nature of your model. So here you can move around, etc. Finally, I wanted to illustrate a little bit of augmented reality. So here is Airo, a free app that you can download already today. Out of Dimension or Substance Painter, you can generate the 3D file in GLB format, and you just position your assets onto your physical world. Here, the table we have in the Lyon office, and see your 3D assets move around with your cell phone here. Something I wanted to illustrate in this video is also the design review scenario. You can imagine that thanks to the link with Illustrator, for instance, you have generated 3 variations of the same shoe, and you want to take some decision about which one is the most relevant. It's as easy as that. Like, you just select the different files, position your shoe in the mixed reality environment, and then you can see the three 3D files next to each other. So that was a quick overview, but just to give you an idea. Something also I wanted to mention is recently we acquired Medium, so a VR modeling tool also. So we expect AR and VR and immersivity in general to be very important in the workflow and the way we design objects today and tomorrow. And that was it for me. If you have any question, I will be happy to answer. And I also added the email of my colleagues, Victor, that will be able to follow you up if you have any business questions.
Thank you, Pierre, for this smooth presentation and powerful designs. So remember, if you have any question, please write it down on the chat so we can read them up. So please don't hesitate.
Hi Pierre, thank you very much for your presentation. I have a question. Do you think about a solution to simulate the behavior of the product? Because what you showcase here is quite static, and I guess that a designer or manufacturer want to see their product in movement. To evaluate the behavior of the shoe, for example, or the car, and so on. Do you plan to develop something for that? Do you need it?
So it makes a lot of sense to see their design into any physics interactions. Like you want to see the running shoe run. You want to see all that. Within the division, we have what a rigging tool, so something to make humans and to make them move, called Mixamo. So, for instance, you can create the shoe and then put it to a human and having him walk, for instance. So it's definitely something that is interesting. And in parallel, also in many software I've been mentioning that we've been partnering with, like Houdini, for instance, or Cinema 4D, you have some physics simulation. So you can apply the substance material and then create the physics into Houdini or Cinema 4D, for instance.
Thank you very much.
Any other question, maybe?
How do you work with a designer? Do you
What do you mean?
How do you get feedbacks from a designer? Do you have do you work with a design agency directly, or it's more the design department of manufacturer?
So both. I mean, more generally speaking, we have a very active community of users. So we get feedbacks on a very regular basis. And sometimes also, and that's what the special project team is about, is we are working more in depth with some key customers, whatever is the size, by the way. So it can be very large companies, but also freelance and design agencies. If we focus, if we identify a specific challenge in workflow, and then we are getting feedbacks and improving the tools according to those feedbacks. So for instance, back in the day, we had a lot of feedbacks about the ask to be able to simplify the geometry in order to put it into Substance Painter, and especially what we call the UV, so how you flatten the object to be able to paint on it. And thanks to those feedbacks, we've been implementing automatic UV algorithm in Substance Painter, and we have a very good feedback from the community on that.
Well, thank you again for this presentation. I think we can close this session. We still are at your full disposal if needed, and please enjoy the rest of the MBM meetings today. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Pierre.